it's just not possible anymore. The way the Democrats have been conducting themselves is just not possible anymore. What they've done is mislead Gen Z, specifically Gen Z and minority voters, into thinking that race is the primary issue in the United States, which is kind of funny, right? Because they thought that Donald Trump was causing all these problems. When in reality, and I think that's what a lot of these voters are waking up to, is that it was actually the Democrats that were causing most of these problems. It was the Democrats that were stirring up these racial conflicts for no good reason, right? Now, of course, you still have racial injustice in the country. I will not deny this fact, right? I don't think anyone would deny that fact, actually. I mean, there might be some on the extreme right or whatever that would, say, "Oh, we have no racial, or we have no racial problems or whatever," right? Because they think that, you know, they're, because it's like a talking point for them, right? But obviously, there are real racial problems in the country. I think the police brutality is just one of those things, right? But also income inequality. But the thing is that I think this is what most young people are waking up to, is the fact that income equality and racial equality are no longer the connected things that they used to be, right? There are a lot of middle class Democrats living in blue states that do surprisingly well, and they are black, right? These are black people that are doing quite well. Latino voters are the same, right? And a lot of poor minorities, for example, blacks, whites, and Latinos, they are also waking up to the fact that they're no longer divided by race. They're divided by class, right? They're divided by a wealth disparity. I think that's what a lot of these people are waking up to. And for that, I think we can thank Trump, because Trump was the only guy that was actually speaking to any of these people. He was the only guy speaking to any of these people, all right? And that's what we call him, Comrade Trump, right? Comrade Trump, he spoke to the working man. He didn't lie. He promised the American people, again, that he would, fix America or something like that. Now, again, I have no idea if that's actually going to be true. I highly doubt it, actually. But we'll see, right? In terms of foreign policy, I think that Donald Trump will be, in the short term at least, he'll be really bad for countries like Palestine, Iran, and even China, right? For one, the tariffs that he's going to make is probably going to cut into the profits of Chinese businesses, right? Obviously, that's bad in the short term. Two, I think that he's going to intensify the war in Gaza and in Lebanon as well, and I think he's going to intensify attacks against Iran. We'll see what kind of cabinet appointments he makes. I am of the mind that he is not going to do anything cool or based or whatever. He's going to appoint the same kind of people, Peter Thiel, all those kind of people, to all the war hawks, Bolton, Pompeo, all those that kind of milieu of war hawk neocons. He's going to appoint them all, I think. And his presidency is even going to be more of a disappointment than last time. I think that's what it is. I think the liberal media especially is going to be hyping him up and saying, "Oh, he's going to be even worse this time around because he's got like the House and the Senate and shit." Listen, even when either of the parties has a majority in both houses or both chambers of Congress, they really don't get that much done. They really don't get that much done. The main issue is that even within the parties, there's a lot of disagreement, especially within the Democrats, but Republicans too. There are a lot of more moderate Republicans, aka non-MAGA Republicans, that probably aren't going to be too happy with a really radical kind of reformation plan. And we'll be watching a couple of videos tonight or this morning, whatever. Talking about we'll be watching a couple of videos from like leftist video essay channels like Vox, Fern, etc. And also we'll be looking at some compilations and some posts from liberals crying. Because I found that to be the greatest source of entertainment. And by far, that's the best part of the presidency so far. He's not even in office, and I'm already enjoying the effects of his appointment. All right, I'm really enjoying them, especially because on Twitter the algorithm is such that breaking out of the echo chamber bubble can be a little bit more difficult. But on a platform like Instagram's copy of Twitter called Threads, um, there are a lot of people on it, surprisingly, because it's really well integrated with Instagram, I think. And the responses on there are absolutely fucking hilarious. And I'm going to go look at them. I'll be on my phone. I'll show you a couple times what's going on, that sort of thing. So, yeah. It's going to be really fun tonight. It's going to be kind of a long stream. So, I guys, hope you guys enjoy. But anyway, it's just so crazy that once again, the establishment has been embarrassed. That's what I'm really finding funny, right? I always find an opportunity to kick the Democrats in the face so amusing, right? Not that I'm glad that a warmonger is in office, because whatever fucking president it is, he's gonna be a warmonger, or she is gonna be a warmonger. But it's just so funny to see the reactions from the left. I also find it kind of disappointing at the same time, though. Because, believe it or not, if I'm going to speak honestly, in the lead up to the election, a couple weeks beforehand, actually, I was still predicting Trump was going to win, right? Because how disastrous the Joe Biden presidency was and how makeshift the Kamala Harris campaign was. I was predicting Trump was going to win, right? The polling seemed like he was doing edge to edge with Kamala in pretty much every swing state. So I was really, really predicting he was going to win. I was a little bit scared, like I said earlier. A little bit scared at the end, a couple days before the election. I was like, I don't know, maybe he won't be, maybe he will be, I don't know. But regardless, the the Harris campaign was such a fucking disaster. It really fucking was. It was a complete and total disaster. But I was low-key hoping she would win. If I'm speaking honestly. I was low-key hoping she would win. The reason why is because Kamala had a sort of appeal to me because not only was she a woman, but she was an Indian woman and a black woman at the same time. So she's got all three benefits, right? She's got all three of those benefits, right? And I was really, really hoping to see Wignat Twitter, Groyper Twitter, all these people get so fucking pissed off at how the country be run by like an e-girl, basically, an Indian e-girl. I was really hoping for that. Primarily because people like Nick Fuentes and Richard Spencer, they're both different in reasons why, but I'll start with Nick Fuentes. Basically, for me, Fuentes is like, before the election, Fuentes was actually kind of basically campaigning for Kamala. He was saying that she was actually kind of like based or whatever, and that Trump was, he was becoming cringe now. He's like run by the Jews, man. He was run by the Jews and shit like that. Yeah, and I really wanted to see like the full extent and the natural conclusion of modern fascism come into being, right? I really wanted to see that first and foremost, right? I really wanted to see the alt-right come into full force, become their truest selves under an e-girl presidency. I think that would be hilarious, right? Not just funny, but also confirmation of a lot of things that I believe in, which is that the modern state, modern fascism, is basically just an expression of like this weird theosophic kind of, ideal system of the caste system, right? So I was really, really pumped to see like the Hindutva caste system plus like the e-girl matriarch kind of like longhouse thing with like secret coalition with the Groypers and Nick Fuentes and Richard Spencer and stuff like that. I was really excited to see that. And I was also really excited to see right wing Twitter, like all the tradcasts, ortho bros, all those, and the traditional goipers all go after Richard Spencer and Nick Fuentes because of that. I was really excited for that. Also, I was really excited for Kamala Harris dumping even more money into the Ukraine and ignoring China for a moment. However, I was talking with Prism from RTSG. We were talking earlier, and he was saying that actually a Trump presidency is really good for Iran and for China. And, correct me if I'm wrong, Prism, if you're seeing this later, but basically he said that but with Trump attacking Iran, right, and Trump being more hardline on Iran, it's going to basically force the reformists to kind of bend over or take the knee for the hardliners in Iran itself, right? And it would basically kind of like reduce their power, because if it's an openly hostile thing, right? And this is the thing we'll get into later, the distinction between the Democrats and Republicans on the real level and the content of what their base is. But like Trump would have actually like launched more missiles probably at Iran. He would have attacked them way more sanctions, no nuclear deal, that sort of thing, right? I think that he will probably do most of that, and I think that's going to actually force the reformists back into like the shadows, basically, and make Iran more aggressive towards Israel, right? Attack them more. So on the other hand, I actually kind of do support the Trump presidency. I support in quotes, right? I do kind of support them, right? But on the other hand, when it comes to China and BRICS, for instance, right, I don't think that Trump's going to be very good for either of them. And especially when it comes to places like Indonesia, right, which is really critical in the competition between China and America. Because China is basically, its strategy, it's not really openly like, we're going to influence this country to do this and influence that country to do that. It's not like that. Chinese strategy is basically the businessman strategy, where it's like, if you want to buy our shit, come to us or we'll come to you, and we'll get some deals done on a fair basis. If not, doesn't matter, we'll find some other partner, right? And Trump's approach is or was pretty similar, right? Where it's like, we're going to do like this deal. It might be a little bit more unfair to you, but like, it's going to be a better deal than the Democrats are ever going to give you. And so in my mind, at least, in my conception of it, and I think some other people will probably agree with me, it's that Trump is the more like Asia, Indo-Pacific kind of shift president, where Kamala is the more European-centric president, which makes a lot of sense, right? If you look at it at like a purely cultural level, Kamala is kind of like this. The Democratic Party in general, right? It's very much like this. The Democratic Party in general is supported by people, by and large, that are PMC people, right? And by PMC, I mean professional managerial class, right? I talked about this a couple streams ago. So the PMCs, right, they work in office jobs, basically. And, it's like the classic 9 to 5. A lot of these jobs are now working from home. And most of them, I would say, are probably bullshit jobs, right? They just file paperwork all day. They laze around, they write some emails, and mostly emails and meetings, right? They don't produce anything. They don't produce value, right? They're not real workers. A real worker is someone who, like, at an Amazon warehouse or something, or, drives a truck from state to state, or, like steel worker, for instance, right? Those are real workers. But these PMCs are not real workers. But they generally do have higher income, right? And so these higher income people, they're more well-educated, which is a pretty loose term, I would say, in this context, but continuing. They're more like well-educated, and, they're more like worldly, right? They're more of like the metropolitan kind of citizen, the more, what's it called? Oh, man, I used to use this word a lot, and I can't think of it. Like, someone who moves around the globe a lot, right? Like the global citizen, right? The rootless metropolitan, right? They're kind of like the rootless metropolitan, where they travel to Europe every summer with their kids or whatever, with their husband, with their wife, whatever, or they travel to Japan every couple of years, or they're more worldly. They watch the news more often. They listen to CNN. They listen to NPR. They read The Economist. It's those kind of people, right? They're culturally more in line with a lot of Europeans, right? Europeans kind of see Americans. It doesn't matter, at least in my opinion, right? I mean, maybe this isn't totally correct, but most Europeans, regardless of class, I would say, again, I'm not sure if that's totally correct, but most Europeans, regardless of class, look down on Americans because they are, in their eyes, barbaric, unwashed, uneducated. They have guns. They support Trump, who is like a total sexist and a racist. And therefore they look down on Americans, especially in the light of the Trump era, right? Beginning in 2016. Thank you, Alaska Lambridge, for the follow. Thank you very much. So, like, when it comes to the distinction between the Republicans and the Democrats, it's basically the Democrats are the more European kind of political citizen, right? They look towards Europe for guidance and enlightenment. They see Europe as this like haven of a common sense and reality and stuff like that. They have healthcare. They have this amazing social welfare system, and they're so enlightened. Even their conservative parties are way more progressive than American conservatives. It's like that kind of person, right? And in that regard, the Democrats are very much more in line with Europeans than they are with any other part of the world. Whereas Republicans, they're not worldly, right? I would say the majority of the Republican base, excepting the kind of upper middle class people and like the really rich people, obviously, they're not worldly. They're very much like local, domestic kind of thinking people, right? Because they care about their own situation more than something that they read in a newspaper, right? They don't care about these other countries. They just want to get business done, right? For instance, like NAFTA, right? A lot of farmers were against NAFTA. And why, right? It's not because like they're racist against Mexicans or whatever. It's just because it lowered their profits, basically. A lot of these MAGA people, or pre-MAGA people, were like that, right? So, especially in like regards to like Indonesia, for instance, right? Democrats, they don't see much in common with Indonesia and other kind of like second or third world countries, right? Because for them, they're not European. They're not Europeanized, right? They might have more in common with like places like Singapore or some parts of Japan and South Korea, but they're not going to have much in common with a lot of other strategic non-NATO allies such as Indonesia and perhaps even like India, for instance, right? Or Saudi Arabia. So a lot of these the Republican strategy, you kind of see it as aligning with the kind of cultural instincts of a lot of their voting base. Which is why you can kind of see the plan of the American deep state in action just based off of cultural kind of a cultural analysis, right? It's very easy to see kind of the strategy going forward based just looking on that alone, right? Ignoring everything else. And another level to this, if you look on a purely class level, and the level of economic relations, right? The Democrats and the Republicans have two very different interests. And you can read a lot about this in books like The Yankee and Cowboy War, which is really interesting, right? The Yankee used to be kind of the industrialist, right? And the cowboy was like, the obviously the one living in the West, right? He had no land, he had no home, right? And in the book, The Yankee and the Cowboy War, which I forgot the author's name, but anyway, his theory is that the cowboy is much more interested in westward expansion and ultimately domination of the Pacific. And broadly, the Yankees, who live in like the Northeast and stuff like that, are more in line with the European trade, the Atlantic side of things, right? So you have like this dual policy going on in the United States. And this is really the real election, by the way. It's like it's deciding every 4 years we decide what direction are we going to take in regards to the world pivot point of Eurasia, right? That's kind of like what the election really is. So when we're looking at the Republicans, for instance, they're much more interested in industrialization, and they're financed by big industrial lobbyists, right? Like the oil lobby, for instance, right? Thank you, Luca the Coca, for the follow. Thank you very much. On the other hand, the Democrats, they're much more focused. They're much more balanced by the institutions. Let's say the institutions of the three-letter agencies, and or the alphabet agent, whatever they're called, right? You got like the CIA, FBI, those sort of things, right? And they're much more composed of like the intelligentsia, of the kind of like the thinking portion of America, like the soft kind of power, right? Again, it's another dialect where you have, or dialectic where you have the Democrats are kind of like the soft power people. You got the culture, you have music, art, genes, etc., etc. That's all genes. That's all linked with like the CIA, stuff like that. Congress. Think of the Congress of Cultural Freedom, right? Or you have the CAA creating the Congress of Cultural Freedom, and they're creating a whole bunch of the new phase of modern art that we saw coming in the 60s and 70s, right? That's like kind of like the CAA's job. The Republicans' job, or that's the Democrats' job. The Republicans' job is simply war, right? They're much more focused on hard power. They're more focused, and that's why you have a lot of these like realists coming out of the Republican kind of administrations and framework, right? Because Republicans are much more focused on the ground operations. They're not really focused on intelligentsia, the spiritual, let's say. They're more focused on fighting the enemy head on, right? Or the enemy. They're not really our enemies, but what they consider to be the enemy, right? They're much more focused on that. So that's kind of like the real dialectic happening. You have the Democrats, the intelligentsia, the soft power people, the Yankees, right? You have the Atlantists versus the Cowboys, which are much more focused on the Pacific and industrialization, and are more willing to work with people and partners that will aid them in direct industrial goals, rather than people who will just offer them kind of things that don't indirectly influence their profits. They're not like in the intelligentsia sort of people. The Democrats, on the other hand, will work with people who will work. They will work with people who kind of perpetuate their long-term intelligentsia goals, right? Whether it be cultural, scientific, but mostly it's about soft power, right? Soft power and espionage. And so, in America, those are the two real factions fighting for control, right? They're not controlled. I believe in the deep state, but I don't believe in a unified deep state. I don't think it's like a singular mass that moves in one direction or the other based off some like council of high elders or whatever, right? I think that's why we still have fascist movements in the U.S., because there is no such thing as the council of the high priests or whatever. Because if there was, we wouldn't have a need for fascism, or at least fascist movements, right? So these two factions are vying for control. It is a real battle. I would not say it's a real battle in the sense of like real stakes. I don't think there are real stakes when it comes to the American people, right? When it comes to the common man, they both agree on one thing, which is that he must be kept down, right? Now, the methods that they use, very different, right? And the same thing goes for their enemies abroad, right? Like the main enemies abroad, right? So China and Russia. They're in agreement that China's bad and Russia's bad. But Russia can be worked with, they can be worked with. This has been said many times by many people in Trump's circle of friends and allies. Trump can be, Russia can be reasoned with. Putin can be reasoned with. He's a reasonable man. And so can Kim Jong-un, for instance, right? Because they don't see North Korea as like this superpower like China or whatever, right? I mean, for obvious reasons, it's a smaller country. But, they're willing to work with certain people, the Republicans at least, if it means strengthening their military position within the Pacific. But when it comes to kind of like, I guess you could call it policy level decisions, right? Republicans and Democrats will fight each other tooth and nail for those things. But when it comes to grand sweeping decisions, there is no real fight. And that's kind of why Trump was kind of really scary back in 2016, because he almost threatened to completely overturn this and turn it into a real partisan war, right? Like a real partisan war, a war of real positions, right? Not just one of policy. He was threatening working class politics. And obviously, he eventually acquiesced. He's bought out by the state right now. He's bought out. Or if he's not bought out, he's at least intimidated by it somehow, or, tricked into it. Whatever it is. However you want to cope with it. He's not aligned with, an out-of-the-box political approach anymore. I mean, the only accomplishment I would say Trump has done so far right now is merely open up the political field to working class politics. That's it. He hasn't actually proven himself to be a real advocate of the working class, right? I was watching a speech by J.D. Vance in a TED Talk that happened like 7 years ago, right? And, the title of this TED Talk was The Forgotten American Working Class, or The Forgotten Working Class, excuse me. And going into it, I don't know why I expected this, but I expected him to say something completely radical, right? Like, what we need is a politics centered on the working class. We need a part. No, he didn't say none of that. I don't know why I was expecting that. I guess it's just I had high hopes. But basically, J.D. Vance's conclusion at the end of that speech was that we just need to focus on the mental health of working class people. That's basically what he said. He said we need to focus on giving poor people the opportunity to have a stable family life. Which is, it's a good plan, but it's not going to lead anywhere, right? That's not like a real that's not like a world-shaking foundational kind of proposition. Thank you, Ned Kelly, 1901, for the follow. And so, what we're going to expect out of the Trump presidency, it's going to be very milquetoast, I would say. It's going to be very milquetoast in terms of real change. But it will be kind of funny to see the reactions of liberals from here on out. But on the other hand, I really don't see it being the same as 2016 through 2020. The liberal rage that we have seen, which I'm going to show later again, but it's just not, it doesn't hit the same. It really just doesn't hit the same as it did in 2016. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't. None of it is really interesting. It's all quite, flattened, I would say. The response is very flat. Very flat response so far. I mean, yeah, we've seen, some hilarious videos, which we will look at later. Hilarious videos of liberals crying, which is, it does bring joy to me. It does bring me joy. But on the other hand, it's just, there's no, hashtag resistance going on right now. There's no, I think the only interesting thing that's happened so far is that some Democrats have questioned the results of the election, which was always going to happen, and they're not really threatening another January 6th. I mean, let's hope they do, because that would be hilarious. Can you imagine? You know what happened in 2020? There was I don't know if you guys remember this. There was an occupation of the Iowa state capitol by trans activists and stuff like that. It was hilarious. What do you make of Project 2025? Feels more like a boogeyman to me to get libs vote. Yeah, absolutely. I've read Project 2025. So I read it with Rev. He has a pretty good idea what's going on with it too. Rev said basically it's just a document. It's a really boring logistical document. Basically, it's saying we're gonna build these kinds of ships for our navy, and we're gonna do this for our military. It's really boring. It's a nothing burger, complete nothing burger. There's nothing going on interesting in it. And yeah, Trump did initially kind of work with the people who made it, but then he distanced himself from them. So now he's not so much involved with them anymore. And, I really just don't see it as that big of a deal. I think people are overreacting. Now, when it comes to the abortion thing, this is one of my favorite arguments that the liberals have made so far. It's these fucking people on Twitter, Threads, Instagram. I have a lot of liberal friends from high school on Instagram. and they're posting on every single one of their stories, especially the women. I've only seen women. No, it's not true. I've seen one gay guy and one regular guy post an Instagram story about the election in a negative way. And, you know, every single one of them was like, my rights as a woman have gone today. And, yeah, it has been a thing for years. Exactly, right? It's nothing new. You know, my rights are gone now. They're completely destroyed. There's nothing left anymore, you know. I'm afraid for my children. They're gonna wake up. They're gonna have to go to work. I'm gonna have to go to work. They have to go to school, and they're gonna be oppressed every single day. And that's, you know, that's funny, but I don't understand the reason behind it. I would assume that this is because of abortion, but I don't think that really explains it. I think the real issue is that for them in their heads at least, Trump represents everything wrong with the world. He's like the ultimate evil. So even if he hasn't really proposed any policy decisions in Project 2025, for instance, that have actual weight behind them, it's still the fact that he even exists that pisses them off and really scares them. Like I think it actually genuinely scares these people, because if you haven't seen any of these videos, and you should, but we're gonna look at them very quickly. If you haven't seen any of these videos, they're absolutely fucking hilarious. Every single one of them are acting like children. Basically, they're acting like children, like petulant children, who, you know, they didn't get like their favorite, you know, gift at Christmas or whatever. Basically, they're acting like it's the end of the fucking world. And to be fair to them, there were a lot of Republicans back when Biden won that were basically saying the same thing. It's like, oh my god, the Antichrist has come. The world is gonna end in 20 days. It's like, no, calm down, okay? Just calm the fuck down. On both sides of the aisle, you have this, I would call it Marvel, like a Marvelized kind of like image of politics, where it's like Thanos won, right? It's like Thanos won, and now we have to call in the Avengers, you know? It's literally like if Thanos won the presidency. And that's basically, you kind of have to frame it through a Marvel movie to understand anything about American politics. You have to imagine it as if some evil comic book villain just became president of the United States. That's the only way you can kind of make sense of the reaction that happens when a president wins or loses an election, right? That's pretty much it. I mean, I think this was best described at the height of like the Marvel phenomenon back in 2016 when Trump won for the first time. You had probably the funniest, most cringe fucking movement ever on the internet. You had not only did you have NAFO, which happened later on, but you had also like all the Avenger memes that came out. It's like the resistance is coming. You had like a it was like gifs of like Hogwarts, you know, like Harry Potter fighting Voldemort. It's like Harry Potter was like fucking Hillary Clinton, and Voldemort's like Donald Trump. And you have all these Facebook memes about it. It was so funny. Like, it was so fucking funny. And I really miss those days. And we're not going to get them back, unfortunately. Because that era of film and that era of state planning is basically over, right? You're not going to have any more Avengers memes, unfortunately. It's just not going to... You might have a couple out-of-touch millennials or whatever that make those, or boomers. But, they're not going to make the same memes. When I look at cinema right now, and I look at, like, the culture kind of cloth fabric, looking at the fabric right now, it's like, the only thing that really sticks out to me is, like, the whole brat thing. But as Logo said quite wisely, Donald Trump actually is brat, right? So there really is no, there will be no, like, Avenger cringe memes anymore. Those are gone. Those are dead, unfortunately. It's really unfortunate, because they were hilarious. But, they're gone. So we have to savor the moment as it is right now. The initial shock of the election. So we're going to look at that right now. I'm going to pull that up. It's simply hilarious to see this. Yeah. It's it's just so sad to see all like these, what I would assume are well-intentioned people, kind of just go fucking insane. You know, it's just crazy to me. I really don't get it. I'm looking at these videos right now. It's just so funny. Alright, so Alex Jones kind of posted something funny. Let's look at that right now. How do I do this? I don't have two monitors anymore, so we're just gonna have to look at it normally. Yeah. Unfortunately. How do I do this? How do I do this? Okay, here we go. This should be better. Alex Jones posted this on his Twitter, which was quite funny. But did someone follow? I didn't catch that. Who followed? Who the fuck followed? Thank you very much. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Let's switch this over. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. Let's watch this. Can you guys hear it? I'm not sure if you guys can hear it yet.
How did we get here? How did we get here? What in the Alice in Wonderland nightmares is going on right now?
All I can say is how fucking dare you?
If you voted for that man, if you voted
I think this one is probably my favorite. Cause like she just seems so like evil. I don't know how else to describe it. She just seems so evil, you know what I mean? Like there's something wrong with like this perspective on her face, plus with like the glasses like warping her eyes. And like the forehead seeming like an alien's forehead. She just looks like she's literally like an alien.
Or anybody other than Kamala, and you live in one of the states that it was, you know, close. Or if you didn't vote, fuck you.
Damn, bitch. Calm down. Oh my god. Alright. We're gonna watch more. I need to fix this fucking shit. I don't know how to do this. Hold up. Give me like 1 second. 1 second. I need to like format my screen. I can like double it so that I can keep the streaming program on the left and like the video on the right. I need to fix that. I didn't think about that. 1 second. Sorry about this. Dude, it's the physiognomy check never fails. It never fails. You know, it's a it's real, man. It's real. All right, how do I do this? Let me edit. Let me edit this. Scale filter. How do I do this? Blending mode? No, wait. Oh no, I got it. Okay. Perfect. There we go. Perfect. There we go. All right. I fixed it. Okay. All right, we can watch the video now.
It's not gonna happen. Go.
I feel sorry for this poor old woman.
I chose family. I chose women. I chose.
Also, I can't tell if this is a guy or not. I think it's a guy, but he looks more like a lesbian. He's got like that lesbian kind of like haircut, and like what he's wearing is really interesting. But I'm not really sure what he is. Can you guys tell? Because I really can't.
America, I love you.
How the fuck is this still happening? All I've ever known politically is hatred.
I'm done. I'm done with
He's done. I'm done.
you. I'm done with you and your mother and your sister.
What? That guy's lips opened so wide when he said that. He's like, sister. Dude, these people have mental illness. They need to be sent to a hospital, man. This is not healthy for them. What the fuck?
I'm just done with all of this.
Bro, can you hear like her dad or like her boyfriend in the background? Watch that clip again. Dude, you can hear the boyfriend in the background. They're like, yo, calm down, chill. He's like, chill. You know, okay, to all the men of America who currently have a liberal girlfriend right now and who are not invested in this election as they are, I am so sorry for you. I hope you get some better pussy in the meantime, because this is not cutting it. This is plain sad. This is just disappointing for you, I'm sure.
I'm sorry to all my friends who are Trump supporters. But you don't understand how scared of this man I am.
Why are you scared? What is there to be scared about? I really don't. Can someone explain that to me? What is exactly there to be scared about? The fuck is he gonna do? Seriously.
If this guy does end up winning again, all of the people who voted for him will be like happy and they'll just be celebrating. And everyone else, everyone who feels threatened by him is fucking scared. Like we're scared for our lives, we're scared for our friends.
How dare you?
You know, I'm noticing a lot of redheads in this. Is there a connection here? Is it like the Gaelic Irish Hibernica connection? Tell one of these women, chill out, babe. It's just abortions. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Okay, if I had an American liberal girlfriend, my girlfriend's not American, nor is she liberal, but if I had an American liberal girlfriend and she was crying about this, bro, it's not worth any kind of like pussy you're getting, like, and you're not getting anything else out of that relationship anyway either, right? Because, like, I'm sorry, but if your girlfriend is a liberal, she ain't cooking for you, she ain't taking care of you, she ain't loyal, right? She's stealing your money, she's making you go to fucking boba places for snacks and for dates. She's fucking extracting everything she can out of you. That relationship is not worth it. And if I had to deal with this right now, I think I would just end it, because it's too much. It's really, really just too much.
Put this man into office for another 4 years, knowing damn well what it means for our country, what it means for us as a people.
To know that there is that much ignorance and that much hate in this country, it's so terrifying. It's so terrifying.
You know, it's almost like they're play acting. You know, I don't know, it just feels a little bit fake. I can't describe it, but it almost feels fake. I mean, look at that girl's expression. That doesn't seem real to me. That's like, that's the sort of like crying you see from women when, you know, like, you didn't take them on enough dates or something, and, you know, they're crying to make you feel bad, but they're not really crying, you know what I mean? Some of these are just theater kids. Exactly. A lot of these people are just theater kids, right? They really are just theater kids. That's so true, though.
Like,
how the fuck are we back in this same situation again?
You know, maybe this is inappropriate, but I have to say, this girl's not that bad looking. I mean, she's like a 6 or a 7. I mean, that's not that bad, honestly. You know, I could deal with that. I could deal with that, definitely. Yeah, it feels like a lot of these people are like acting for like really big views on TikTok. And that's my biggest problem with the whole reaction so far. It's like, it's so obviously staged and fake almost to an extent, right? And that's why it doesn't really hit as hard. Because a lot of these people know the algorithm. They know that they're pandering. So, or, you know, they might not consciously acknowledge it, but they know this, right? So they make a big mess of themselves on social media and shit like that to get attention, to get clicks, to get likes. I think especially that one video of that black woman. Oh, let me find that video. I posted that on my account, and I was appalled. I was appalled at the video. I was just like, how is this even a real person? Here we go. Here it is. Here it is. Yeah, this is the video. You guys might know what this video is. Let's watch.
I'm sorry! No! 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 Why? Why? Do you really hate me that bad?
What? What's going on in this video, man? Is she really acting like that, like on purpose, or is this like a joke? Like, it just doesn't seem real to me. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't seem real. It's like they're doing it
I'm sorry.
just to get attention. It's like they're doing it just for fun, I guess. I don't know. Like, I don't know, man. It's not like I haven't seen women act like this before. Especially during 2016 when Trump was first elected. It's not like I never saw this, but you know, that time it really did feel real, and I don't think we're ever gonna get like that inauguration, you know, queer person crying video, the one that's really famous. She was like, "No," that one. I don't think we're ever gonna get that. I think that era's dead, man. I really do think that era's dead. But you know, I really saw something interesting with the election results this year. It just feels like there's a new paradigm shift happening, and I can't really explain it, but it feels like, even though it's not as theatrical as last time, it feels like something big's about to go down, right? If you've been watching some YouTube channels, or maybe just you yourself do your own research, if you've been watching some YouTube channels and it's about like the stock market and the economy, right? A lot of people are saying that the next big crash is gonna happen very soon, potentially at the end of January next year. It's kind of a signal for things to come, I guess, because I feel like this inauguration, it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be pretty smooth. There's not gonna be a January 7th, I guess, but something's gonna go down, and I'm not really sure if I like it so far, but you know, I do like chaos. So yeah, Biden administration is gonna rush out aid to Ukraine. Yeah, that's true. They just recently released $6 billion to Ukraine. You know what's interesting though is that a lot of world leaders congratulated Trump and called him personally, especially European leaders. They did this, and the highlight of the evening, I'm sure, was Zelensky's call. Zelensky and Trump made a call for you know, an hour or something like that. And, you know, Zelensky was like, you know, we're going to be so happy that you're here. We're waiting for your strong leadership, etc., etc. You know, close dialogue, cooperation. This is posted on RTSG News, by the way. Go follow RTSG News if you have not already, at RTSG News _news on Twitter. Follow that account, by the way. Yeah, it's clear to me that the majority of Americans, the majority of both parties, rather, don't really care about their foreign policy promises, it seems. It looks like to me that no matter what, Trump's going to continue most of the... good, you read every RTSG article. Good. Perfect. We need those soldiers. You know what? Let me let you on in a secret. I've written most of the articles on the RTSG News website, rtsg.org, because nobody else wants to write articles except for me. So I'm the only one writing them, pretty much. I mean, there's obviously some that are not written by me, but yeah. By the way, recently we just posted an article on the website, rtsg.org, where we talked, we had a reporter down in Washington, D.C., interviewing people after voting this election. And the article came out a little bit late, but it was still pretty relevant. Basically, it was just talking about how people voted for Harris and for Trump for really different reasons. They voted for Trump for really different... No, it wasn't Trump. No, it was Harris. They voted for Harris for really different reasons, right? A lot of them were just talking about like really meaningless stuff, it seems. You know, didn't really feel real in a sense. Am I getting a phone call? I'm getting a phone call. I'll be right back. Price of having to deal with a woman. Random calls. Anyways, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, we were talking about the news. Yeah. You know, I'm really excited to see what kind of responses we're going to get from liberals in the next few weeks. I don't think we're going to get anything that huge, but I'm really excited to see that. Anyways, I did want to read this with you guys. I thought this was really interesting. On the subreddit, r/Marxism, there was a post about Jackson Hinkle and the ACP by a guy called Eduardo Pest. No relation to Pest Mime. Supposedly. Let's read this. Okay. Jackson Hinkle and the ACP. Right? Don't judge me for this. It's a bad idea. I subscribe to the new Red America Journal of the American Communist Party. I thought it was very insightful. Maybe seen and heard. And made me feel optimistic about class unity and all. Then I saw Jackson Hinkle be mentioned as a founder of the American Communist Party. And that left me with a horrible taste in my mouth. We can never embrace MAGA politics, refuse to condemn and turn our backs on MAGA. Blah, blah, blah. We have a saying there, blah, 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 something, 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 racism, something, something, sexism, whatever. They make the case for liberals being the fox and Trump being the wolf. I understand all that. But Hinkle being affiliated with this makes me nauseous. Doesn't sit right with me at all. I remember hearing about Hinkle being in a picture with someone from an intelligence agency. By the way, that's completely bogus. It's just cope. And it makes me feel like he was planning to use the left's language to try to appeal for us. He was a MAGA communist after all, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. First of all, my first problem with this is that how do you hear about the ACP's Red Journal, or Red America Journal, without knowing about Jackson Hinkle? That doesn't make any sense to me. I'm assuming this guy's an American, so it's not like he's some foreign Communist Party member who's like, oh, the American Communist Party has made a new journal, so let's read it. Completely with no context. I don't think that's what the case was here at all. I think this dude knows about Jackson Hinkle. He decided to make this. But anyways, the response to ACP from leftists has been really interesting. They just recently, Swamp Communist, just made a big post, 4,000 likes, 4,000 to 5,000 likes, attacking ACP for, I think, Halali's appointment to the high bailiff position in Vermont or something like that. Vermont or New Hampshire. Which, by the way, is really, really cool. He's like the sheriff. The sheriff is a really interesting concept in mountain theory, Rocky Mountain theory. The sheriff is a very interesting concept. And the sheriff is actually the profile picture I use for my account here. And for my Discord account, believe it or not. And for my Twitter now, actually. I just changed my Twitter account, that's right. The sheriff is a great man throughout all of history, but especially in America, because the townspeople, when a disaster hits them, when bandits come by, when the women are taken and the fields are burned and the town is ransacked, who comes to save them? It's the sheriff, right? The sheriff comes and saves them. The sheriff comes in, he rides in on horseback. Town's in a mess. It's run by gangs. And now the sheriff comes and he cleans up everything. He cleans up the criminals. He cleans up the bad actors, the corrupt politicians. He restores order, right? That's the sheriff. And in the movie, The White Sun of the Desert, right, which is a Soviet film, right? My profile picture is taken from this movie, right? The main character of this movie. And in the movie, the main character, I forgot his name because it's like Russian or whatever. I don't remember foreign names that well. The main character, he is a war veteran of the Russian Civil War, right? It takes place during the later stages of the Russian Civil War. The whites are basically gone, right? There's a couple stragglers remaining, though, in Central Asia, where a desert is, right? Now, the imagery of the desert's really interesting to me because a lot of, like, the American Southwest, for example, is desert, right? And especially California, too, where you have Death Valley and stuff like that, the most infamous desert. Though I would not really call this, or classify this as, like, the same kind of desert as that exists in Arizona and New Mexico, but it is still a desert, so California still does have some hope. Now, the reason I like deserts is because the desert represents the kind of untapped potential, I think, in America, right? A desert is a kind of empty canvas, let's say. It's a kind of empty canvas where anything and anyone can blossom into like a prosperous future, right? Think of the example of Las Vegas, right? Las Vegas is an obviously fake city in a lot of sense, right? It's only as big as it is because of speculative land capital and gambling, all right? Got the big casinos, they owned all the land, they own all the casinos, and they just steal money, basically. It's America's playground, right? They made a mockery of the desert, in a sense. But what Las Vegas also represents to me is the unrealized power of a gamble, right? The gamble is actually, when you remove it just from finance itself, right? The gamble is not just related to money. The gamble relates to every single decisive moment in history. When Napoleon invaded Russia, for instance, he made a gamble. He made a gamble that when he took the capital, when he took Moscow, at least, I don't think it was the capital, but when he took Moscow, that the Russians would give up, that they would surrender, right? But they didn't. The Russians kept on going. They kept on churning. And in a sense, when the American settlers moved out west, they also made a similar gamble. They made a gamble that when they moved out there, they would find riches or prosperity in some respect, right? Not necessarily just gold, but some other form of prosperity. It could also be oil, right? When they moved out west, they took the gamble that this would happen, right? But on a more fundamental level, they took the gamble that they would win in the stakes against the federal government, which was slowly but surely beginning to encroach upon the rights of man within the American West, right? So for me, the desert not only represents like this kind of desperate gamble of the American proletariat, the desperate gamble of MAGA, and the desperate gamble of the mountain men, but also the untapped revolutionary potential that exists within the very sparsely populated kind of mirage of the West. Because the West is really a mirage. You ever really talk to anyone or listen to any politician ever talk about the American West in any other way that's just like, we gotta give charity to these people or whatever, right? I've never heard anyone say that. Have you ever had a guy that was like, we need to support these Idaho farmers, these Montana farmers, these people from eastern and the far western parts of Colorado. We need to support the New Mexican people. You never hear about that, right? You never hear about those kind of people. You never hear about, oh, we need to like help the firefighters, right? You never have that kind of politics. It's always about, oh, the Midwest, oh, the South, oh, the Appalachian Mountains. It's never about the Rocky Mountains, even though the Rocky Mountains are a far bigger problem than anyone will ever admit in this country, right? That's why it's kind of like a mirage. It's like a mirage of like, it's kind of there, but it's not, in a sense, right? It's there in fiction, right? And a lot of these people in the Rocky Mountains feel really unseen, which is why especially people like in Idaho and Montana have a really strong sense of state identity still. There's a lot of Montanans, especially older ones, right, who are very much attracted and attached to the idea of maintaining Montanan cultural and economic independence, right? There's a lot of talk about that, right? Not to say that there aren't people like that in other parts of the country. I'm just saying, specifically in the American West, it's very, very apparent. And these people aren't really seen, right? They aren't seen by the government, so they have to do this, right? In a sense, they have to become self-reliant, right? There's a kind of like primitive Rocky Mountain Juche that was developed back in 1880, right? There's kind of like this self-independence, this self-sovereignty that was developed. And today it still kind of exists, right? Now, I don't think the Rocky Mountains are very happy with the situation. They're still reliant on the federal government for a lot of shit because the federal government owns all their land. And they're not happy about that either. So, I think that the Rocky Mountains have a long ways to go, actually. They do have a long ways to go before they're ready to take on the mantle of raising the steppe army and conquering the rest of the country. Because that's basically what's going to happen. They're going to get... I keep talking about Mormons a lot in private conversations when I talk about this subject. Because it's, they are kind of a powerful force in the area, in the region. Johnny Boy, my Montanan family has an incredible sense of outsider versus townie or whatever. I don't blame them because rich people are constantly moving in and building mansions. Exactly. There are so many articles you could probably read. Still, the ones I've read are a couple years older now. About Montanan views on outsiders moving in. It's bad, right? I mean, I talked about this a couple streams ago, but I'll talk about it now again because I didn't record the last two VODs because of a mistake on my part. By the way, all these VODs are being uploaded to the YouTube channel, and I will post a link to that YouTube channel in my Twitch soon. I just haven't done it for some reason. But yeah, basically, oh yeah, okay. If you don't know what the YouTube channel link is, go to my Discord. My Discord is still linked to my Twitch. So go to my Discord, get in the Discord. There's a link there to the YouTube channel. It's very simple. The channel's name is just Gilpo Seraph. But anyways, the Rocky people are a very insular people. They're actually quite similar to Koreans in that respect, right? Mountain people are tenacious as fuck, right? They are tenacious as fuck. They are hardliners on anything that relates to their state. They are usually independent of a lot of these kind of national level politics. And they really just want what's best for their local communities because no one else will relate to their local problems, right? In a state where you live, like if you live in a state like New York or California, right, you're basically connected to every other like major metropolitan kind of state, right? You're basically connected to Texas, Oregon, Western Oregon, Washington. You got Florida, for instance, right? Whatever happens at the national level will affect all of you pretty much equally, right? But in places like Montana and Idaho, where the problems are so unique and so embedded in the state's culture, you cannot possibly legislate those things from Washington, D.C. It's just not possible, right? When I think about a new capital for the U.S., a lot of my first instincts is to say Chicago, but on a more deeper, more spiritual level, I know that the capital must be Salt Lake City, Utah, and that's why I kind of like really focus in on like the Mormon meme, right? Because to me, the Mormon meme is more real than anything else in American politics. I myself am not a Mormon, but what I see in Mormonism is an indigenous American belief system that no one else in the world has, right? Only the Americans have developed Mormonism. Only the Americans have. And in Mormonism, if you read it on a very kind of surface level thing, right? Mormonism actually sounds pretty cool. It basically says that Jesus Christ went to America, right? Which is the most badass shit ever, by the way, right? Jesus Christ visited America and he blessed this good goddamn green earth, right? That's kind of cool. And I think that's why it really appeals to a lot of Rocky Mountain people. Because they don't see America as connected to the rest of the world. What they see America as is only what they see on the news and what's around them, right? And what surrounds them and what's on the news are very disconnected. They are not the same thing, right? Trump talks about an abortion ban, or not, or a lack thereof, or they're talking about the states, the Supreme Court getting a new justice, or they're talking about some new federal law about weed or some shit, right? Or gay marriage or something like that, or there's a new war in Ukraine, there's a new war in Palestine, there's a new war happening in Taiwan, and that is completely and totally disconnected from their daily life. Because if you live in a big state, like, let's say New York, you are literally touching the very seat of power in the world, right? You're literally living close to the UN building. You're like half an hour away from going to the UN building or some shit, right? Or if you live in California, you live in San Francisco or LA, you're close to Hollywood, you're close to Silicon Valley. Seattle, you're literally close to, or Portland or whatever. You're close to, very big hippie kind of areas, right? Very in touch with like the modern culture. They're developing the modern culture, the tech bros. Close to Vancouver, right? But when you live in Montana, or you live in Idaho, or you even live in Wyoming, right? You don't live anywhere. You live in the middle of nowhere, basically, right? That's why people call them flyover states, right? Because they're so behind everyone else, right? They're so culturally behind everyone else. And maybe my response to that, and that's why I developed this whole Rocky Mountain theory in the first place, was, well, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing that they're behind everyone else. Maybe it's a good thing that we should respect and maybe even protect and maybe even support this kind of American isolationism that has developed in the Rocky Mountains, right? Nowhere else in the country has this, right? There are, of course, pockets of it in Appalachia and the South, right? But the South I think is a very different context, right? Where their American isolationism basically is just this worship of the glorious Confederate South, right? The Southern identity, so to speak, right? And it's a very separatist kind of identity. It doesn't represent America. And when you have places like the Appalachians or even like the Ozarks, right? Those places definitely have an isolationism. I will not disagree with that. They have their own culture, their own isolationism, own history, right? But they are, in effect, separated into, they're cut into enclaves, right? They're cut into enclaves of isolationism. They're more like mini communes in a sense. Like if you think of the analogy of like the mini commune versus the Soviet Union, that's kind of what we're dealing with here in my head, right? Where you have the Rockies are kind of like, in this context, right? They're kind of like the Soviet Union, where it's a big isolated section of the country. It's a huge section of the country that stretches all the way from Mexico to Canada and into Canada, right? And on the other hand, you have like these mini communes where in Appalachia and stuff like that, where they're developed their own culture, their own identities, their own isolationism, their own kind of American history. But it's not going to impact anything in the long term because it's so small. It doesn't have any potential. But the Rockies have an untapped potential that no one in this country seems to recognize. That these people, regardless of like whatever politics are happening right now, right, whatever form they're taking right now, these people have a potential that if it were to be utilized or even let loose, let's say, upon America, it would fundamentally challenge what it means to be an American, right? It would completely break the distinction between the cowboy and the Yankee, right? As I discussed earlier. It would completely destroy the distinction. Because if you have a Pacific-oriented person, or Pacific-oriented faction on the left, and or on the west, rather, and a Atlantic-oriented position on the Atlantic, or on the east. Excuse me. Sorry, not thinking. I haven't had much sleep. You have one on the east. It's a dialectic that can't be solved by anything other than sublation, right? These positions will never go away unless something else happens to them, right? Something new under the surface must develop in order for these two factions to be completely destroyed or sublimated into a new American identity that throws away both distinctions. One cannot triumph over the other, right? You have the Pacific versus the Atlantic. They can't triumph over the other because they will always focus on maintaining American dominance on the seas. It just depends on which sea you're talking about, right? But those in the Rockies don't give a fuck what sea we're on. They don't care. They don't care what country we're giving money to. They don't care what country we're giving weapons to, what country we're allied with, what international institutions we've developed. They don't give a shit. They just care about the fact that we're giving money to them instead of developing American communities, right? The other parts of the country, I'm not talking about like regional separation, by the way. I think that's what draws a lot of people away from this. It's like, oh, you're just talking about like, you know, some sort of LARP regional nationalism, whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a completely new foundation for American nationalism, a completely new foundation. If that is to occur, then I think kind of like poetically, it must arise out of the place in which the last indigenous civilizations of the country were killed, right? That being like, you know, the Blackfoot and stuff like that, the Indians, right? The Indians were destroyed in their last form in the Southwest and in the far north of the Rocky Mountains, right? Those are the last tribes to fight against the U.S. government, and, you know, they were defeated. But in a larger sense, this merely laid down the groundwork for a completely new rebellion against the federal government, right? Because not only do Indians in the Rocky Mountains and whites in the Rocky Mountains and blacks and other people, actually Latinos are a large portion of this too, not only do these people have very similar economic interests, as shown by this election, right? By this very election, it has been shown that American Indians, Latinos, and poor whites all have a common interest. It just needs to be articulated in a way that they can understand, right? And it must happen where all the groups of America converge, right? All the groups of America converge upon the idea of the frontier fortress, right? In an old America, before even the Mexican-American War, actually at the eve of the Mexican-American War, there was these things called frontiersmen, right? They were called frontiersmen. And they would often meet after they had gathered all their pelts for the winter or whatever, you know, they hunted or whatever bullshit, right? They would go to these local kind of forts that were not just military forts, but also trading stations, restaurants, hotels, that sort of thing, right? They would stay in these places and they would meet the world, right? You would have you would have a frontiersman who was originally born in Missouri, who came all the way west, right? And now he's living in the middle of northern New Mexico, and he's meeting with his Frenchman friend who is half Indian, half French, and his wife who is a Mexican, Indian, Hispanic kind of descent. And it's like this whole mix, this whole new kind of people forming together, interlinking, and developing their own identity separate from either the Mexicans or the Americans back during the mid-1800s, right? It was a whole new world, a whole new civilization that was being developed on the fringes of the new one, right? This is a really, really revolutionary area, right? It's a really revolutionary area. There is no other place in America that has the potential that the Rockies do, right? It just needs to be articulated and developed so that they can understand what their power is, because a lot of Montanans, a lot of Idahoans, a lot of Wyomingites, Utahns, even Coloradans, Arizonans, New Mexicans, even some Texans, I would say, and Nebraska, stuff like that. They have a sense of powerlessness in the face of the strength of the federal government, right? But what I would say is draw inspiration from the Indians. No shit. Draw inspiration from the Indians, right? A lot of young Americans in this area are not as, held back by the ideas of the old generation, right? And they're willing to look for anything to help with their problems. I would say look at the heroism of the Indians. Look at the heroism of the miners in Boise and some French name in Idaho. Fuck, what's that name again? That's so embarrassing for me not to remember it. There was a strike. There's tons of strikes that basically happened in Montana, Idaho, and Utah, Colorado, these places, right? Think about the heroism of those people fighting against the government. Some of them even actually maybe even won, right? A couple times. Think of that kind of bravery, that kind of strength that the mountain people have that the rest of the country just doesn't have, right? It just does not exist. California, Western Oregon, and Washington are not included in this calculation because these places are domesticated. They are docile, right? There are a lot of MAGA people in California, I know, Northern California especially, and some parts of Southern California, but it's just not the same. There are an unmeasurably large amount of MAGA people in the Rockies. It's insane. And the only reason that they don't seem as big as they used to be is because of out-of-state implants from California and Texas and other parts of the country moving in, especially eastern parts of the country, believe it or not, moving in, taking control of the state politics, working with the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, and just stealing all the resources they can out of the state. And then once their term is up in the governor's office or whatever, they leave. And that's that. Or they own some property in Montana still. They own some property in Idaho still. And it's nothing they can feel like they can do about it, right? In fact, what I think a lot of white Americans are now experiencing is kind of the same thing that the Indians experienced during, the push westwards from the American settlers, right? But back then, it was like a civilizational battle between two completely opposing kind of peoples, right? But now, one of these peoples has a chance to fight back and is reclaiming their identity by simply living in this region, by simply being born in this region, by understanding every single facet of it. They are building something new, and I cannot wait to see what it is. And personally, the victory of Trump has reaffirmed the possibility of working class politics in this country that can be determined by and for the working peoples of America. It can be possible. It can be done. If Trump can rally so many proletarians together, so many MAGA people together, regardless of race, regardless of, all this other shit, religion, if he can do that, then so can we. Right? So can we. I support the American Communist Party. I support the MAGA movement. I do not support Donald Trump, but I support the MAGA movement. I support what Donald Trump represents, or may be represented. I support the changes that he's made simply by being elected. And honestly, that whole garbage truck thing and the McDonald's worker thing, that possibly the greatest stunt in American politics ever, right? I don't think anything comes close. I don't think anything comes close when that comes to that whole thing. That was like a Mao down to the people, up to the mountain sort of thing. Mao had a lot to say about the mountains. I think near the end of his life, he was saying shit like, by God, if I have to do this revolution again, I will take up arms and go to the mountains and start a guerrilla war again, if the Cultural Revolution fails, right? He's saying some shit like that. And that quote still resonates in my head to this day. We will go to the mountains. We will sit our asses down. We will read. We will work with the people. We will talk to them, not lecture them. We will talk to them. We will work with the people. We will build a new power. And we will surmount the insurmountable by taking control of America through the power of the working class. I think that's the end of the stream for tonight, or this morning, or this afternoon, whatever the fuck it is for you. Not as long as I hope to, but I have to do something real quick. So, yeah, the VOD will be uploaded, by the way, on my YouTube channel at GilpoSerif, or you can go to my Discord link in my Twitch. Go there. If you enjoyed the stream, give it a follow. If not, go fuck yourself. Yeah, I'll see you guys another time. Peace.